Because when women have money, women have power. And when women have both of those things, I think to be an entrepreneur and not have a connection to spirit or purpose or divine reason is a very soulless and depleting experience to build a business. Nobody cares about your personal brand. People care about themselves. You should care about your personal brand, but don't care about that more than you care about the people that you serve. Build a brand from ego is doing it wrong. The internet is a place for you to share wisdom once you've learned your lessons. Biggest things that I learned was you're the prize. Because when women have money, women have power. And when women have both of those things, I do believe we're going to live in a different type of world.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. Now, HubSpot is the resource that you need to tap into if you are an entrepreneur. It's no secret that starting a business is hard. Even if you have an amazing idea, bringing it to life can feel overwhelming. With HubSpot's new entrepreneurship kit, you can go from idea to IPO with the help of a company that knows a thing or two about growing better. This all-inclusive kit gives you step-by-step guidance and frameworks to help you crush every stage of starting a business. With tools tailored to help all steps of the entrepreneurial journey, it's packed with templates for project management, emails, skill development templates. There's also a solopreneur guide. It's got freelancing, pricing worksheets, and lots more that you can use to get up and running immediately. And best of all, it's free. With expert guidance and frameworks from HubSpot, starting a business doesn't have to be hard. So don't wait to start yours. Go to HubSpot.com/ENT to download the guide right now.
First of all, thank you for coming.
Are you kidding? Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited. So this is going to take you back to your old world, but it's going to sort of tee up what you know so well.
Yeah.
So you have a pinned tweet, which I think has been pinned for
God, I haven't been on Twitter in so
No, it's not a bad
long.
thing. It's
What
not a
does
bad
it even
thing. It says your personal, no one cares about your personal brand.
Yes, true.
That is your pinned tweet from I think 3 years ago.
It's pretty awesome, actually.
But I was like, okay, that's interesting to start it there because that's where you spent most of your life. So let's sort of tee up what you helped people with, help them understand the personal brand, maybe speak about SimplyBe, where your agency came from. Because this is the second show we did. I can't remember what the hell we spoke about the first time.
I just remember loving you. That's all I remember.
Because I think it was like a very stressful week in your life when you did that show.
Oh my God, that was right.
Yeah, I remember this. I don't remember what was happening, but I just remember it was a shit hitting the fan moment for you.
Oh,
I don't know why.
No. Wow, where do we even go?
You take it wherever you want.
No, so I met you, Scott. Speaking of my SimplyBe agency chapter, the business that I ran for 7 years on personal branding, where I tweeted that thing, that's my philosophy on personal branding, which we'll get back to. I had a podcast scheduled with you the day that I was about to reorg my entire company. I had started the business from zero, kept getting business, went from 0 to 5, 6, 7 employees in a very short amount of time. And then I had written a book in 2021 that I was on your show to promote. That book did really well, but it doubled my business. There was just an explosion of my pipeline. I had to double my team in less than a year. So I went from 9 people to 22 people in 11 months. And as a small business, it was just chaos. And I hired up a lot of the wrong people, and clients weren't happy and things weren't working. And it was all my brand reputation. And I had hired people that I really loved.
As people, but they weren't
great. Performing.
Yeah.
And I had to, the day you and I had that podcast, I was a freaking disaster. Because in 3 hours, I was about to tell my entire company that 3 of the leadership team was being let go and everyone had a new manager. And it was one of the hardest things that I'd ever had. I started this company as a solopreneur, wanting to consult, wanting to help people with their brands. I kept getting business. I had to hire a team, then I had to hire a leadership team, and then an executive team. I didn't really know what I was signing up for running an agency. I kind of became a CEO, a real CEO by default, and really had to learn leadership and running an organization on the job. And the people part was the hardest part for me because I'm such an empath and I love people and I wanted my team to love me, and they have to respect you first, not like you. Anyway, I think did we reschedule that podcast and do it again?
No, we didn't. I know what happened though. What we did is halfway through, I think you had like
I think I cried to you.
For a second, yeah, you did.
I got teary-eyed with you, but we were a stranger.
Halfway through, yeah, like super stranger, because we didn't even do like a
nothing
call. It was just like, we're going into this halfway through. It was just like this super real moment where you're like, this is a shitty day for me. And I think I was like, well, do you want to reschedule? Like, what do you want to do? And then you're like, no, let's, like, I can keep going. And then I said, fine, we'll just like edit out this little bit of it.
Yeah.
Which was you basically talking about you having to let people go in 3 hours from when we were speaking.
Yes.
And how it was like, listen, it's never easy to let people go, but I think it was really hitting you hard, like exceptionally hard.
I mean, that day points back to the pinnacle moment of my burnout. That is absolutely one of the hardest days I've ever had in my career, was terminating 3 of my leadership, demoting 1, having to call all of my staff into the big conference room at 4:45 at the end of the day, surprised them all. They didn't know what this was. They were all freaked out, and told them we were letting go of half their management. And I had stressed, lost sleep, just beat myself up for 3 months leading up to that meeting, because my entire executive team, my board, they were all telling me I had to do it, and I dragged my heels on it because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And I learned
How did that work out?
You want to know something? I wish I would have done it sooner. Like, it's one of those things, quick to fire, slow to hire. My entire business transformed the next day. It was the best decision I could have ever made. Everything changed for the better. I remember meeting you and you saying, do you want to reschedule? And I go back to that moment in time, that girl that I was, that woman that I was. And I was like, I can't reschedule with this guy because I have no time to reschedule with this guy. Like, this is all the time that I have to do this. So I have to override my nervous system, power through this stressful moment, not show up at my best because I don't want to miss the opportunity. And I've got all these plates spinning of being the spokesperson to the brand, being the leader of the team, being the fiduciary responsibility CEO of the organization, being the podcast host myself, the author of this book. That was the apex of my burnout when I met you. I was a mess. Sorry. Don't apologize. I think that's like the most normal reaction to running a business, because when you interview a lot of people, and you interview people on your show too, and you speak, and you see all these other business leaders that seem to like have their shit together, and they never do, right? No, it's so
I think I was also looking on your Instagram, and there was a clip, I can't remember how long ago. It wasn't as long as your tweet that I just brought up, but it was a couple weeks ago. And you were saying about every single person who's a business leader who's built something meaningful, even people that are just starting out, they have this army of people supporting them.
Yes.
And that is so true. And I feel like we don't really highlight how difficult entrepreneurship is, how difficult business building is, how stressful, how depressing it can be. And most people, it's so sad because entrepreneurs should not feel like they are alone. Most people have a really hard time like raising their hand and saying like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like whole world is crashing down, or it feels like it. It never is, but it feels like it, because your entire identity is in this one thing that you've been building for the past 7 years.
Yes. And synonyms of the word identity is ego. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just human nature. But we never want to seem like we don't have, if we built this business and the perception is something online, we feel like we need to maintain it. Forget online, to our teams, internally, externally, to our boards, if we have them, to our own goals and spreadsheets that say we're going to make this much money year over year, quarter over quarter, and chasing the maintenance of that identity is something that is so excruciatingly specifically unique to an entrepreneur. I mean, I really equate it to a bipolar experience, and I don't mean to diminish that experience because it's very real, but there are the highest highs and the lowest lows, And it is really personal development school on steroids is what I say, being an entrepreneur, because it's your whole soul that you've poured into a business. And when you eat what you kill, it's just a different life.
It's a totally different life. When you started SimplyBe, did you raise money or was it just...
I bootstrapped the entire thing.
Bootstrapped the whole thing.
Yeah.
I also just want to frame it. So the problem that SimplyBe was solving was personal brand.
Yes.
And then back to that thought, why does no one care what your personal brand is when all you were doing was building personal brands for people?
It was a pretty provocative thing I put on Twitter. And I wrote about that in my first book, B. So I built a personal branding agency rooted on the premise of authenticity, that to build a brand from ego is doing it wrong, is what a lot of people do, which is why the idea of personal brand is sort of gross to people. People think that they never want to do it.
What do you mean from ego?
When you're simply self-promoting, when it's all about you, when you're the star of your own platform, you're not, your community is the star, they're the main character, that you're showing up to be seen without any purpose or service towards your community. The biggest secret about building a personal brand, this is what I said on my Twitter account, is that no one cares about you. No one cares about your brand. What do people care about? Themselves.
Yeah.
And so everything that you create has to come from a place of service. If you want to resonate online and create loyalty, create trust, create a compound effect of growth to create clients, it has to really come from your heart. You have to be of service, knowing that you're just the vessel, you're just the channel. Your gifts are needed. You were put here for a reason. You are special, but so are the people that you serve. And if you architect content every time you go post, whether it's a YouTube channel, a tweet, a blog, a talk, a book, and you put your audience first in every single thing you say and do, you're going to resonate. You're going to find your people because they feel like you care about them. And so it's great. You should care about your personal brand. You should care immensely about it, but don't care about that more than you care about the people that you serve. Because I think that's really what we're here to do. I think that's when we're in our highest vibration, when we're helping other people.
You know what's interesting though? So the difficulty people have is, we just spoke about how entrepreneurship is a shit show.
Yes.
And everybody feels like an imposter.
Yes.
Everybody's trying to build shit and nobody wants to open up as to what's really going on in their life or their business. Because if you actually spoke about what's going on in your business, arguable that it would even be received well, because it's such a mess. It's so chaotic,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to inspire and I'm trying to teach, how am I going to tell them that, you know, my video editing team for my podcast didn't follow the SOPs for like the 10th time in a row? Yeah. Because that's what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's not helping or teaching or inspiring anybody.
Yeah.
So then I feel that there is its disconnect between what I'm experiencing as a business leader,
yes,
and then what I'm putting out into the world as a personal brand. So maybe I could try and teach and inspire, but it's not really what's going on every single day. So what, even as from a personal example, what I've tried to do is turn my content into like lesson that I should have learned already.
Beautiful.
That I'm actually just telling myself.
Yes.
And that's worked out well so far. But I think a lot of people have a hard time being that vulnerable. I think it's difficult.
I think it's a couple thoughts there. I think it's important to take your audience on a journey with you. I think it's important to be the student out loud to some degree, as much as you are a teacher. I think people resonate with truth in a way that they don't resonate with perfection. And it's a fine line. I'm with you too. I just started my whole new business and it is somewhat clunky and chaotic and I'm figuring it out as I go. And I haven't wanted to share. It's not necessarily for my audience to know yet, because here's what I say. I have so many thoughts on this. I'll take you back to when I was first on Facebook back in like 2010. I was going through the most horrific breakup with this guy that I was with for 5 years. I loved him so much. We had this horrible breakup. It was so, so painful. And I was new to social media and I didn't really, understand what it was going to be. And I was getting on Facebook at the time. Instagram wasn't even out yet. And like being really cathartic and talking about my breakup in my posts. And my friend of mine, who was a little older than me, she pulled me aside and she was like, Jessica, the internet is not a place for you to process. You have your therapist for that. The internet is a place for you to share wisdom once you've learned your lessons. So go through the breakup, feel all the feelings, talk to your mom, talk to your therapist, heal from this, and then come back online in 6, 7, 8, 9 months when you've grieved it and have gotten over it, and you have new lessons to share about love to your audience of women and relationships. And I'll never forget that. And I think that principle has always rung as true for me as possible because I like to share what I'm going through, but certain things, whether it's personal or professional, simply aren't for the public. And your audience probably doesn't need to know that your YouTube guy didn't follow the SOPs, but you can talk about it once you've figured out and come back and share that. And that would be so relevant of what you learned so that they can learn it too. And the second thing I was going to say is it's so important to find community of other like-minded entrepreneurs and talk about these things in private spaces. That's why masterminds exist. That's why group coaching programs exist. That's just why a network is so powerful. I was mentioning all those women I'm seeing tomorrow and having dinner with here in Miami. Those are all women that are playing this game too. And those are some of my favorite spaces because we all get to just be so honest and private, and it's healing.
Yeah. When you look back at sort of the journey you went on with SimplyBe, like I would ask the question, like, are you happy you went through all those experiences? Do you wish anything could have been done differently? Because an agency is a very difficult business.
Dude.
An agency okay, so I want to talk after this because when you build a personal brand and you build a large podcast, then your friends start asking, like, can you do this for me?
Yep.
And I think that's how an agency starts to form. And I'm very careful not to, because I don't know if it's scalable. I've worked with tons of agencies. I mean, the margins seem like
they're
paper thin, like absolute shit. I see the people that work for them don't even like working for them because they're like all overworked and underpaid. So is this a business that you were happy building in retrospect?
You just described my life for 7 years. Although I did pay my people really well. I was above market for sure.
Good.
It's exactly what happened. I wanted to build my own personal brand. I had run a business before SimplyBe. I ran a magazine. People knew me as this girl that could do marketing and branding really well. I started getting clients right away to pay the bills in consulting mode. And all I really ever wanted to do was build my own brand, but I was really good at building brand. And so clients just kept coming and I kept saying yes. And the truth is I loved my clients. I wouldn't work with anybody unless I loved them. I believed in them. I wanted them to be amplified in the world. I loved that I could be the person to help them do that. But it is a beast of a business model because the more clients you get, the more people you have to hire. And you're selling time. You're selling ideas. You're selling strategy. And we were brilliant at it. That's why I continued to grow. We were really great and our clients were happy. But there's a lot of attrition in the agency space. It attracts typically a very emo, creative type, which I'm here for. But I had a lot of Gen Z, millennial people who were just putting it on their resume, and I was building my dream. I was building my soul's vision and I wanted a family. And, you're always on. It's a services-based businesses, regardless of what it is, are brutal. But to answer your question, Scott, I wouldn't take any of it back. It was a total accident that I created an agency. I became one of the top agencies in the country. I really grew my chops as a leader. I've created and trademarked a methodology that I put in my book that now almost 100,000 people have read. I feel like it was all divine. I'm, pretty spiritual, as you know, and I'm so grateful that it led me here because I learned some of the deepest, darkest lessons. This is where I found my light, and that's kind of what my new message is all for. And yeah, I don't regret it.
So when you speak about your new message and light, and this is like you're writing another book about this now, and I don't really know much about what this book is actually about. So what prompted the thesis of light and the concept of light, and then it's really called light work.
Yeah, the light work.
So what does that mean?
So it's a big question.
Because it's like, because I know you're spiritual, but I'm sure there's like a very like tangible entrepreneur component to it as well.
There is.
So what does this mean?
So I started writing this book when I was coming out of the depths of my burnout. So SimplyBe, yeah. Oh yeah.
after we spoke on our podcast.
Yeah, that was like October of 22. I know the date. So it's October of 22. A couple weeks after I met you, I went to Egypt on a spiritual pilgrimage. That was completely predestined. I could not have planned that trip more effectively or perfectly. And I had a full-on death in Egypt. Like I had a total ego death in that country. I had a massive experience in one of the temples. I write about all of this in my book. And my system activated, and I was really able to understand the truth of my human experience, especially in those last few years, building a business as a high-performing female entrepreneur that was highly addicted to success, that was very much measuring her value based on how much money she was making, how much, accolades she was receiving. The world was reflecting back to me that I was winning, but I was miserable inside. Toward the end of 2022, I wanted to burn it all down. Speaking of your question of what was running an agency like, it was the hardest thing. And so I've always been spiritual. I've always really felt more like a spiritual being, having a human experience, more so than even an entrepreneur. It's sort of been, I've been pretty open online about my spiritual practice, but it hasn't really been out loud. This is really me coming out of the closet in the spiritual world, in the community, saying, I'm a teacher of this. To be a light worker today, which is what my book stands for, it's called The Light Work, Reclaim Your Feminine Power. It's a book for women, but men can get a lot out of it too. Live your cosmic truth, not your truth, but your cosmic truth. And when you do those two things, you can't but help illuminate the world. And illuminate the world is the end of the subject line. And I think that we're really in a very dark and heavy time on our planet. Just turn on the news. And it is so important for us to show up in our full magnificence, our full power, our full confidence, our full sovereignty, our full conviction in who we are. And how we find that light is through the dark. And to accept these dark challenges, whether they're personal or professional, and we as women and people have them all, is where we find our brightest light.
So it's interesting because obviously you see a society in 2024 and obviously not just recently, like for years now.
Yeah.
People are more secular. Like society is very much godless compared to what it used to be even, probably 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? Yeah. So it doesn't matter what religion it is. It's just there's removal of God from...
It's been tainted. And
so now you have... And I love this quote that everybody has a God, even if you don't believe in God. So the God could be money, or it could be work, or it could be women, or it could be gambling, or it could be drinking, or it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a negative vice, but everybody has a God. Everybody has a reason why they wake up every day and do the things that they do, right? There's some purpose. God could be your family too. That's fine, but there's a reason why. But I feel like when you don't have formal religion, okay, that's cool. But then you start to lose yourself because there is no structure or framework. And as humans, we're very bad at just winging it.
Yeah.
Like it's, even if you're trying to build a business.
Yeah.
If you're going to build a business, you learn from people that have done it before. You learn from systems and processes that have worked. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, you can, disrupt a little bit, but ultimately the core concepts are not so different. So when a major part of our existence and us trying to figure out why we're here on this earth is no longer sort of structured, I think a lot of people lose themselves. Yeah. And that's what you see. And then I think it's further propagated by all the media we consume and how negative it is, and it just messes with us. I think we're not in a good place in society in terms of mental health. So
absolutely not.
Where does this, what you're speaking about, where does this tie into like our sense of self, what we believe in, maybe a higher purpose?
Yeah.
Like, explain spirituality so people can understand it. Because if you're going to say, I went to Egypt and I went into a temple and then I had a death of ego, that's very confusing for a lot of, like, doesn't make any sense to the majority of people who haven't even stepped into a church once in their life, right?
Correct.
So what is spirituality and how, explain those concepts so people can wrap their head around it.
Yeah. Lots to say about this. So I think to be an entrepreneur and not have a connection to spirit or purpose or divine reason is a very soulless and depleting experience to build a business. Mm-hmm. So I think those things have to be intertwined. Like, I liked your metaphor of like, God is something to you. And for, I'm sure the listeners of your show, God is work. God is work for me too. But it's not just to get up and crank Zoom calls and take meetings and hustle. It's back to what I was saying about the personal branding philosophy. It's like, what are you in service of? What is your deep mission? Like, why do you think you are here? You've been put here for an assignment, and you've channeled that assignment into your business. When we lose sight of that, and all we become addicted to is the money, the dopamine hit.
Yeah,
that's when it feels like we're disconnected and mental health issues arise. It's exactly what happened to me. Back to Egypt, if you really want to know the truth, and this is just a huge message I hope to leave your audience with, whether they are woo or ever even know where Egypt is on a map, it doesn't matter. The main message that I walked out of that experience with, as a woman, as a human, as a businesswoman, as Jessica, was, it's supposed to be fun. This human experience is supposed to be joyful. And you've missed the memo, girl. And so instead of trying to put on some sort of spiritual philosophy, belief, something you see on Instagram, read a book, what your parents told you, what community you came from, what community you rejected because it didn't align, it doesn't matter. I believe that personally, that the divine is you, and it is intended for its highest vibration, for you to be in your joy. Because when we're joyful, we become magnetic. And when we're magnetic, we attract. And it's effortless. It's easy. And I had been muscling and gripping my way through my business, connected to my own survival.
Yeah.
Versus my thriving and humanity's thriving, doing it for a bigger purpose than just what my bank account said every day. And so that's really the roadmap that I've written in this book. It's really at the intersection of spirituality, women empowerment, women leadership, and a little bit of, woo about, the goddesses and whatnot. But it's really a very down-to-earth book on spirituality.
I think what you said is super important, because I think that I'm a living example of what you just described as well. So I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they're high performing people.
Yep.
And they realize very early on, because I think they realize that if they put more of themselves into it, there is some sort of positive outcome.
Yeah.
And then that feedback loop and that response from energy output and then positive response, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
And you do it again and again and again and again. And then it's like, it just creeps up on you. It's like any drug. You don't realize what it's actually doing to you and your life until you pause for a second and take a step back, and you're like, holy shit, like, what has my life actually become?
Yeah.
And I've actually noticed it very recently. It's so interesting because I actually just had this conversation this morning with my girlfriend. So I've noticed recently that, like, my memory isn't as good. So it's not like I'm like anything serious, but it's,
I understand,
like small conversations we'd have, or like somebody who I met at a party, I'd forget their name when normally I wouldn't forget their name. And what I started doing is I started not taking calls that don't serve me. I'm not going out to events that aren't like sort of like moving the needle in the business. I'm basically saying no to a whole bunch of shit.
Yeah.
So I end up having a lot more free time. And then I started to notice that, like, I'm sharper,
Yep.
I can remember things that like everything, like probably cortisol levels decreasing, everything. So you just feel healthier, but you don't, in the moment, you don't realize it. I think it has to go to an extreme before it starts to physically manifest as sickness, like physical sickness. You're getting sick, you're all the time, whatever it is. Yeah, depression. Like your cognitive performance isn't what it used to be because you're always pushing yourself. You're cranking yourself at 150%. It's a serious issue, very serious issue. So I'm realizing this now because she always tells me too. She's like, I think you two would actually get along quite well. But she's always like, it's not supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be easy.
Yes.
But then you hear the entrepreneur stories and it's like, well, I struggled for like, you listen to Mark Cuban. I think Mark Cuban, I don't remember the story exactly, but it was like, I was broke, I was poor, I was sleeping in a room with like 4 other guys when I was trying to build my businesses. And like, oh, then I'm like, now that's how I became a billionaire, right? Mm-hmm. So you fall into the trap of, well, that's the way that it has to be, because I've never really heard too many entrepreneurs say, well, it was always easy and it just sort of fell into my lap and I didn't have to work hard. Mm-hmm. And that's not the story.
Yes. First of all, I'm proud of you. I'm serious. Secondly, I think that there is an era of grind we all go through to build what we set out to build.
Yeah.
But it's not sustainable to be at that grind mentally. And what you're talking about, the cognitive overload of your memory going, that even in small micro ways, I'm so happy to hear you say that out loud to your community, because it's what you're talking about is structure and boundaries around your time and your energy. I actually, a few months before I met you, that horrific call that there were many stages to my burnout, but I moved to Nashville in the winter of 2022 out of Chicago. My husband and I rented this house on like 10 acres of land. And it was the first time I had been in nature at that level in my life. And I got down in this house the first week of January in 22, and I was so unmotivated. I no energy. I started crying every day. I had no desire to leave the house. I didn't want to shower. I literally just thought I was tired. And then I have an amazing therapist, and I saw her weekly, and I would just get on these sessions with her and I wouldn't even be able to talk. I would just cry. And she diagnosed me in January of 22 with situational depression. And I ended up, she recommended I explore medication. I was feeling like such death. I was open to it. I had never taken like an SSRI or a benzo in my life. But I was like, sure, because I can't do this. It's
not normal.
This is not normal.
Yeah.
Long story short, I ended up going the holistic route and I did a ketamine protocol instead. Ketamine healed my depression in 2 weeks. Truly, it did. It didn't heal my habits and I went right back into burnout. But back to your point, my holistic psychiatrist explained to me depression. It's inflammation of the brain. The left and the right brain hemispheres stop talking to each other because it's so inflamed from the stress.
So there's a physical...
It's a physical ailment.
Wow. And they can measure this?
They can measure this.
Like an MRI or something like that? Or
I'm not a doctor. I talk a lot about ketamine in my own experience.
Yeah.
But...
There's a way to diagnose.
Yes.
Okay.
Ketamine is being used now for PTSD with veterans, bipolar disorder, clinical depression. I was situationally depressed. It wasn't clinical. It was due to my physical full-on depletion from working so hard. And I went on this call with this psychiatrist, this one call, and I was like, I need drugs. He's like, you don't need drugs. He said, you need to sleep. You need to heal your hormones. And I'm going to put you on a ketamine protocol. And I could see my life clearly after that. But there's such a mental, like, think about our brains as computers. What you're saying about what you just were talking about with your girlfriend this morning. It's like, you only have so much space in the hard drive. It comes to a point where we are hard drive overloaded.
Yeah.
And we have to slow down. We have to draw boundaries. We have to be discretional with our time. We have to say no. We have to make space for joy. Like, not just the right meetings, but like taking a walk down the beach with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Going to a concert or going
going on a vacation and not being on
email.
Yeah, which I don't think I've done in I don't even know how long.
It's
right?
hard.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah,
I had no choice but to practice slowing down in 23, and I healed my body and I healed my nervous system.
Is this why you chose to sell?
Yes, that's exactly why I chose to sell.
I just want to take a second and thank the HubSpot Podcast Network for supporting Success Story. The HubSpot Podcast Network has incredible podcasts like The Product Boss, hosted by Jacqueline Snyder and Minna Kunlo Sithep. If you want to take your physical product sales and strategy to the next level to create your dream life, you need to listen to The Product Boss. They sit down for an hour. They do a workshop style podcast. They're going to talk about everything that you need to know to up-level yourself. Social media, marketing, if you're in consumer packaged goods, if you have any sort of physical widget, you need to tune into The Product Boss wherever you get your podcasts.
So walk me through that, because that's a huge change. So you've built this thing, your identity is tied into this business.
Yep.
And then, you had this life-changing, to a degree, experience. You're forcing yourself to operate in a different way. Technically, you didn't have to sell. You can find a way to operate the business in a different way that's more, because if you were at the point where you could sell and somebody is willing to purchase you, that means that you didn't have that linchpin key person problem in the business. That means you could step away and the business would still function. It means you have all the right operators and all the right leadership in the business.
I did. So back to spirituality, Scott, which I know is new for you in your community. I feel like everything happens for a reason and perfect timing, and that you have to trust that timing. So I came back from Egypt and I had just brought on an integrator. Are you familiar with a COO, like every visionary?
It's like the EOS system?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had just brought on basically like a managing director of my agency who was fully operational and focused. And she got me out of the weeds of my business in like 45 days. And started running my business.
How did you find a good person so quickly for this?
Freaking hard. I got this girl I met at a conference told me about her friend who did this, and I filed it in my brain. I was like, maybe one day I'll reach back out to that girl to get that girl's number, and I wasn't ready, and then I was, and she was. I just got an intuitive hit when my friend was talking about this girl. I was like, I'm gonna know that girl, and she helped me sell my business. I brought her in. She made it operationally efficient. Helped me make more money, got my team right, plucked me out of the fray and put me in the CEO seat within less than a quarter. And within a year, I got approached by two companies. Actually, two companies reached out to me in the same week, a private equity company and a strategic buyer in the same week. This is what I'm talking about, the universe. It was halfway through 2023 when I decided to slow the fuck down, heal my nervous system, prioritize joy, play with the idea of what I would do next. I wrote my second book during that time. I got a book deal. I'm like, I'm going to write a book about what I want to write about now. And then these two companies knocked on my door in July. They both made me offers. And I liked...
How did they find you?
One of them found me through LinkedIn. I mean, I get a lot of LinkedIn emails, we all do, and it was sort of buried in the haystack. And he was a private equity, like sort of advisor, scouting companies at my revenue range. And he asked for a 30-minute call and I took it. And the 30-minute call was like a 2.5-hour call. It was like 3 men and me. And they were like, well, you're impressive. It's the best feeling for my ladies watching. And they ended up making me an offer. And then this other company, Hawke Media, the company that ended up buying me, they actually had reached out to me 2 years before, when I just was about to launch my first book. And I took the call at the time just to entertain it. And it's a really good piece of advice for those that are watching that are ever interested in exiting a company. Even if you're not ready, even if you know your business isn't ready and you have the opportunity to take conversations with potential buyers or people in the space of exit, do it. It's just an education, and it prepares you to know your direction, how you could be valued, what they're interested in seeing as far as growth. And so I knew my business was about to pop because I was a few months before my book launch. So Hawke Media, it kind of felt like they were like chasing me Like I was, like they kept knocking like every.
That's good. It drives the valuation up a little bit.
Their head of acquisitions emailed me like twice a year.
That's good.
And then they emailed me the same week that this other company emailed me. And I ended up going with a strategic buyer because a private equity company would have whittled me down to the bone to squeeze out all the profit, meaning they would have let go of a lot of my team.
You knew they were going to do that? That was the strategy?
I could just see the writing on the wall. They were money guys.
Yeah.
They liked the
private
asset.
equity usually is a money play.
It was all about money. Yeah. And no shame. I love money too. But the strategic buyer would keep my brand, keep my team, keep my clients, maintain my legacy. And I had set criteria of what I wanted as the founder when it came to the financials, when it came to my personal brand expanding in the market, my ability to interface with clients at my time, my title, how I wanted to engage with the agency as the exited founder. Because I'm still with Hawke. Like I'm technically a part of Hawke.
So they kept you on as advisor or something?
Basically, an executive vice president of personal branding. And my focus is supporting business development now. Okay. But I don't have a boss. I don't have a team. I'm not in a single meeting.
Were you happy with the exit?
Yeah, I was really happy with the exit. I wouldn't have sold my business to them unless I liked them. We're very different companies or very different culture. It's just like with any buy and acquisition, there's a transition period that can be somewhat of a shock on certain levels, for sure, because it's no longer your company. But I really love the founder and CEO, Eric Huberman, this founder and CEO of Hawke. I think he's brilliant. He has a huge vision, which is just not my vision, which is to build the biggest marketing agency in the world. Go for it. Happy to help support your vision with my
When you were thinking of exiting, were you looking for, because now you're at the point where you hire an integrator and you're getting these offers, were you looking for like FU never work again money? Were you looking for, I just want to be out of this so I can work on something else?
The latter. I mean, my business wasn't like, I wasn't going to sell it for $100 million. My revenue wasn't there.
But you could have grown it. You can always grow it, right?
Yes. That's a great question. I would have, had I had that vision. I remember saying to myself halfway through this SimplyBe journey, I was like, I could scale this to a $50 million company if I really wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And then if you get a good multiple on that,
then you're set. But I knew that it would be another probably 7 years of the agency grind.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't want to do it. I had built that agency from debt, Scott. I had no money when I started that company. I was a solopreneur. I had no strategy. I had no clients. I had no website. I literally had the name SimplyBe in a logo. And I was like, hi, I'm for hire. Need help with marketing and branding? Like everyone was priced differently. And I scaled it to a best-in-class agency, a multi-million-dollar company in less than 5 years, actually. Was awarded Forbes Personal Branding Expert, Inc. 5000's fastest growing company, got a six-figure book deal, wrote the book about the agency. I had nothing left to prove. I fucking left it all on the floor.
Yeah.
And I was done.
When you were so now mentally you're like, okay, I'm going to sell it.
Yeah.
Are you already planning what you're doing next? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they have this identity crisis the second they sell.
Yeah.
So have you thought about it yet or no?
Oh, yeah.
You're that calculated with it? Because I know people that have sold that even if it's not $100 million exit, they start to do a little bit of angel investing and then they start to, be advisor, mentor for some companies, but they're kind of just like
floating. Yeah, no, I'm not floating. I had back to Egypt.
A lot of good shit happened. Why Egypt for a spiritual journey, by the way?
Oh my God. Egypt is, that's a big question.
Because I'm trying to figure out, because a lot of people, they'll go to like Israel for a spiritual journey.
Yeah, or Bali, Costa Rica.
Yeah, I've never heard of Egypt before.
Egypt is based on where it's located on the planet. It's like a direct cosmic doorway. It's an open portal.
You're really into this. I love it.
You should read my book.
Yeah.
This is scratching the surface, Scott.
No, I love it. I just don't know anything about this world. I didn't know Egypt was a cosmic doorway.
Yeah.
It's not tied to a religion then?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
No. It's more about kind of galactic connection.
You studied this a long time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wrote my whole book about it. Okay. So do you know, we'll take a little bird walk. Do you know like Orion's star?
Yes. Yeah,
like the 3 stars in a row in the sky? So for a certain month, I don't know exactly when in the year, but those 3 stars line up exactly with the 3 pyramids of Giza in Egypt, in Cairo.
Really?
Yeah. It's a portal. It's a direct open gate. And when you go there, it's a massive experience to go there. It's not a vacation.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I died in Egypt, like I said, and that, identity, the bright yellow, SimplyBe, face and founder, that girl really left the building after that trip. And so I spent 2023 creating a new relationship with this new version of myself. In fact, the first section of my book is called I Am New, because that was the only way I could describe myself when I got back from that trip. People were like, how was it? Did you like it? Tell me about it. I'm new. That was like the only way I could define what happened to me there. And I hosted a couple retreats in 2023 for women. I just pulled a rabbit out of my hat, like I said, and was like, I'm going to host some retreats. They sold out within a month. They were high ticket retreats. I got like 20 women to sign up for each. Half of those women asked me to coach with them after the retreats were done. Meanwhile, I'm still running the agency, but I've taken my hand off the wheel in a huge way because I've got this integrator now that's running the day-to-day anyway. And I started to formulate like, what would I do next? I love to work. I'll always want to make money and grow and serve. And I got this vision to launch myself as a coach and really reclaim my spiritual story and to put that at the forefront of my message. And so the agency's acquisition, like I said, that week in July, halfway through 23, when I got that knock on my door, I took that as such a sign that it was meant to be. And I knew where I was going next. And I have had, don't get me wrong, like I'm no longer the CEO of a big company. I don't have the team. I don't have the same systems and process and support. And I'm also not really at all needed at Hawke, right? Like they don't call me for anything, So I have been in a bit of like a redefining this new identity, and it has been amazing. And it's also come with a lot of awkwardness and fear, frankly. Like, what's my place?
It's the identity. It's the identity of who you are. And have you figured out what is next for you?
Yeah.
Because you wrote a book. Okay.
Yeah.
So awesome, but that's not a full time.
No.
You have to figure out what to do for the next 30, 40 years.
Yeah, no. Good, your poignant timing. I've launched myself as a coach. I'm working with high performing female entrepreneurs in a lot of VIP high ticket coaching programs. I just launched a mastermind of my own. I have another retreat coming up. I'm going to be launching a brand new business school online for women in August after my book. It's a digital program. I plan to roll out a membership next year. So I'm doing all the things, but I'm doing it my way and bringing that blend of business, branding, and spirituality to high-performing females.
After going through the exit event, what is one thing that you wish you knew about an exit that is not part of like the entrepreneurial narrative?
One of the biggest things that I learned was you're the prize. That if a company is interested in buying you, you don't need to be subservient to what they want. They're knocking on your door because you're the asset. It's a role reversal. And at least this is my advice as much as something that I learned. This is just what I did, is I asked for exactly what I wanted. I was super forthright with knowing my value. And I think we can feel like, oh, they're the big guys, pick me. Am I good enough for you? And we really value we think that valuation is purely based upon EBITDA, right? I ran an agency. My profit margins weren't that high, but I showed growth like this was one. Two, I had an incredible brand in the market. I had trademarked IP. I had longstanding employees. I had a big book of business. I had won a ton of awards in the media. All of those things open up the aperture of how you can be valued. And that was not something that I walked into starting SimplyBe understanding, but as the years went on, and granted, I talked to a few advisors about it, like finding your competitive advantage in the market based on a lot of other things outside of EBITDA. Like one of the reasons that Hawke bought us was they've been wanting to do personal branding as a service for 5 years. They could build it from the inside out and take years to build it, or they could have speed to market and buy me and plug and play. And so all of that had how we were able to achieve that for Hawke was, yes, of course, about our revenue, but also about the machine that I had built and the credibility of the brand and the market that I had built. No one's going to question SimplyBe if they Google us. We're still our company.
Of course.
So did that answer your question?
It did. No, I just, because you've gone through it, and I think a lot of people are aspiring. That's like kind of the goal, right? When you're trying to build a business.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, not everyone, some people are very good at maintaining their value.
Yeah.
But it's like the power balance of a discussion around selling a business.
Especially women. I don't know how many women who are listening, but
actually about 50%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because we undervalue ourselves too much.
Yeah. But I see that so I think I see that in career too.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I've heard this before, and I'm sure there's some truth to it. Like, if a guy is applying for a job, they could be like 70% qualified and they're still going to put in their resume. And if a woman's applying for a job, she won't put in her resume till she's like 150% qualified.
Yeah.
And that's an issue.
Yes.
Because you have to take more shots to win.
Yes.
So I can only imagine not many people have a support system that can tell you how to deal with private equity.
Correct.
Like that's a very small percentage of people who know how to navigate that discussion. Even as a man going into that discussion, I'd feel nervous.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, like, it's not easy.
And I put resources around me. I as a privately held company, I constructed a board, and I had meetings with them every single quarter as I was going to scale my company to exit, because I needed to know the answers and ask questions in safe spaces. But when you show up as a woman in those conversations, I mean, my whole career is founded upon like the principle of like fake it till you make it, right? Like just pretend you're confident. Just pretend like you know exactly who the fuck you are and what you're saying. And people will believe you. They don't know the difference. And it's my mission on this planet, back to my own spiritual assignment, that women have money, that women have lots of money. Because when women have money, women have power. I say this all the time. That's just the reality we are in. Those two things are conjoined. And when women have both of those things, I do believe we're going to live in a different type of world. I think, not to say that men aren't incredible, and I love men, and you're one of those amazing men who's definitely in his heart and gets it. But women have a different sense of empathy and community and collaboration when we're in our healthy feminine that makes safer spaces to work, makes, more equitable communities, more reverence for the planet. We should all be practicing those things, but I feel like women undervalue their power. When I coach my clients, I'm like, how much?
Say you have a front row seat to all this.
I do.
Yeah.
My clients are like, I think I'm going to charge $1,000 a month for this thing. I'm like, add a zero to it. I'm serious.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not.
Zero to that. And then they're like, I could never do that. Why? Let's feel into that in your body. Where is that coming from? Where does that fear come from? Who told you you're not worth that? And we unpack that. And we understand their story, their fears, their failures, and their successes, and their expertise, what they know that no one else knows. And it's all about perception of value. Like, if you charge $10,000 a month for something, someone's going to assume this chick knows what she's doing, and I'm going to stand up really straight when I become her client. Who are you not to charge? Who are you not to add a zero? That's what I say to my clients all the time. And it's a lesson that I had to learn. And the more and more I charged, the more and more clients I got, the more and more right clients I got.
That's a key thought. The more and more right clients.
Right clients you got.
The clients that don't give you all the pain in the ass, BS, the clients that pay on time, like the right clients. you want to elevate yourself. Like you want to move up in the market always.
Always. Yeah.
There was a point in your life when you chose to rebrand.
Yeah.
So speak to me about why that was, because, you know, we're prepping for these shows. Yeah. We sent a voice note over as different things you want to chat about. And I thought that was interesting because for most entrepreneurs, that's just like a, you know, slight strategic pivot, whatever. Yeah. It's not like a major notable thing in their life when, again, they've gone through an exit. Who cares about the rebrand? That was like one of the many million things that I did. Yeah. Why is that so important for you?
Well, I'll speak for myself. I rebranded me.
Yeah.
I'm in the space of personal branding. We were just talking about it, all three of us. The importance of a personal brand is everything, and people need to catch on more, right? And I wrote a whole book about personal branding. And even though I was associated with SimplyBe agency for 7 years as the CEO, I always had and maintained my own personal brand as Jessica, the founder. And I created its own platform and its own strategy and its own messaging, its own podcast. I wrote a book. I had a very specific Instagram grid. I wrote about very specific things on LinkedIn. And when I sold the business and that identity died in Egypt, back to that, I didn't want to tell that story anymore. It was no longer who I was. So I rebranded my life. I rebranded my story. I rebranded my look and feel. I rebranded my website. I rebranded my podcast. I rebranded my entire Instagram. I had like 3,000 photos on Instagram. I archived most of them down to like 200. Really? Yeah. I just cleared it.
You're very intentional about this.
Yeah.
Very, very intentional.
I think we have to be. Personally, I think that your brand is your lighthouse. It's your hallmark. Your personal brand is your ultimate business card. It's your reputation in the market. I believe that a brand is what creates the flywheel for marketing and for sales. It starts with brands. And its intention is to create an emotional affinity to its consumer within less than 10 seconds. At this stage in the internet, like 10 nanoseconds. And so the brand was the business. It is my business. I'm launching myself as a coach. And so it was more than just rebranding my platform, though it felt like I was rebranding my whole life.
Do you feel like it was a rebrand? Or do you feel like it was an evolution?
It's a really good question. I think it was both. I think it was first an evolution, and the brand was an expression of that evolution.
Was there hesitation when you were rebranding? Because obviously everybody's known you for one thing.
Yeah.
So when you're known for one thing, it's a little bit riskier to rebrand than if you're known for nothing at all.
Yeah.
So was there hesitation? Was there pushback? Just for somebody who maybe is putting themselves out there right now, who doesn't really love how they've presented themselves, how did you decide after you have an audience, like which direction to go in?
So one thing that going back full circle to the beginning of this interview, when you asked me about that tweet.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about your personal brand. People care about themselves. That's a principle that I've tried to live for the last decade. And I feel like I've created a really beautiful community from that. And because I've taken them along with me, when I decided to evolve and when I decided to rebrand, they were a part of it. And because I sort of hard launched it all at once, like I sold my business and made the announcement. A few weeks later, I launched my new platform. And they were all so excited about it. That's not to say that I didn't.
That also means you built a true community.
I did. I built a true community. And I think that's, if there's a takeaway for your audience around personal branding, like show up every day for your community, be of service to them, make them the main character. And they will feel that. And whether you close your business, sell your business, pivot your business, decide to go into a totally different industry, quit entrepreneurship altogether, become a parent, like they'll go with you if you've given them the honor of showing them that you care about them.
One idea that you have, and I think this is sort of just like a nice spot to leave the audience, full light consciousness.
Yeah.
So again,
educate me, Jessica.
I'm laughing because listen, I can find some very strategic talking points around exiting a business or building a personal brand or like social content. When you talk about full light consciousness,
you chose to ask it. You could have taken it anywhere, but I'm so happy you did.
No, because you know how this is a podcast, like a podcast lesson. How do you do a good podcast? You talk about the things that are important to the person, the guest. That's really it at the end of the day. Because it doesn't matter for me. I can try and pull out things that, you know a little bit about, or like, you know, you've done in the past. But ultimately, what creates a good show and what just creates a good conversation is when you care about the other person.
Yeah.
This is a podcast lesson. This is a social lesson. This is like a life lesson. Like, stop being selfish. Like, just stop being selfish. So for me, I want to understand everything that you're going through right now and what's top of mind right now, because there's a lot of people that I could speak to about personal brand. There's a lot of people I could speak about social content, right? But not everybody's gone on the journey that you've gone on. And you've gone on it successfully. Like, you've not just built a massive agency, you sold an agency, you now close high ticket clients like exceptionally quickly, like you fill out events. Like, it's not like you're doing anything from lacking of experience. Like, you've all done this stuff yourself. So I want to understand, after all of this, this is the mental framework that you operate from.
Yes, I do.
So I think it's very important to like dive into that more.
Thank you. I'm so happy we're gonna leave your audience with this one. So as I define it in my book and in my life, light is a synonym for information. Light is information. Darkness is lack of information. When we turn on the light in a dark room, we can see. And I believe that most people, consciously or unconsciously, are in the dark around the truth of who they really are. Darkness isn't evil. Darkness isn't bad. Evil and darkness and fear and toxicity and jealousy and competition and scarcity, those things manifest when we don't turn on the light and we don't see the truth of our magnificence, our uniqueness, our essential responsibility that we have here on this planet to make it better, and that we are capable of that. We were put here to do just that. And so light consciousness is really tapping into your one-of-a-kind DNA that makes you as rare as a diamond on this planet. And I think when we really, truly get in touch with that, we shine differently. That's what a diamond does. And that experience has to, however, be found in polarity. I think we find just exactly who we are, how authentic and needed and special we are in the friction, in the hard, dark, challenging experiences. And so that's been my journey.
So the way that I interpret that, and I'm a big fan of this concept, is if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, there's a tactical. You can go learn on YouTube. You can go figure out how to be a great graphic designer. You can go figure out how to run like a great ad set that has a high ROAS, right?
Yeah.
But the other piece of it is the mindset piece.
Yeah.
So there's two concepts that I believe in fully. One is that you have to find a way to build systems, processes, and a mental framework that allows you to do the thing for an unreasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
That's where you succeed. But the other piece is to constantly be open to learning and improvement.
Yes.
And when you say light is access to information and then darkness is like closed off from information, at a very like fundamental layman term understanding, it's like you are always being open, you're understanding your value.
Yes.
But simultaneously, you're always being open to new information and upskilling. And that's the way that I see it.
Beautiful.
So you are not closed off. You are not closed off. You're not saying that like I know everything and I'm peaked out at who I am as an individual.
Yeah.
You're always open to improving in like the most basic sense of the understanding.
Yeah. It's a journey in humility as much as it is confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you wanted to tell an entrepreneur, like, these are the steps that you have to take to think the right way to be successful, to operate the right way to be successful, to to embody full light consciousness or some version of it.
Yeah.
What is a practice that's worked really well for you?
I would say 2 things. Getting super clear on what makes you, you, and embodying that. That is a journey in and of itself. But we have to truly believe that we are needed here on this planet. I think that when we click on to that understanding, everything shifts. And the practices I have found to get there personally have been working with mentors, coaches, guides. You know, we can talk about it's the team you need for your business. You need a team for you as a CEO or a founder or an entrepreneur. And I've invested a lot of time and energy and resources in people who have really accelerated me and who've held up mirrors to me to show me who I am, because it's hard to do it for yourself. And this sounds so basic, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you sit on a meditation pillow because it's overplayed, but like really truly get in silence, be with yourself, close down the mental computer, get into nature, get into your body.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's such a essential game to play, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. But I have found the deepest messages of my light when I've been with myself.
I agree with that fully. For me, actually, what I end up doing is just beating myself up in the gym, because then I can't think of anything else other than what I'm trying to do right now.
Your gym is a spiritual practice.
It very much is.
Yeah.
It very much is. And I'm sure the endorphins that come from working out and whatnot, combined with the fact that you really can't focus on work,
right?
It just puts you in like a really good space. So again, for me, that's my shut off from the world and just focus on me and my thoughts and get very real about what your life is and what it isn't, and are you happy and are you fulfilled and are you on your right journey? And I think however you architect that's super important.
Yes.
Because we always lose ourselves. It's very easy to get distracted.
Right. We got to slow down.
Amen. Yeah, I agree with that fully. Okay. So if people want to connect with you, where are they going? Where obviously the book is anywhere you can get books.
Yeah.
But what's the website, social, everything?
I'll shout it all out. Thank you for having me. This was so fun. So you can go to jessicazweig.com. That's how you say my last name, Zweig. jessicazweig.com is my website where you can find out all of the things that I'm doing. You can go to the lightworkbook.com. That's where you can buy the book. If you buy one copy, I send you close to $3,000 worth of pre-order bonuses. You get some live events, you get a masterclass, you get a sneak peek, you get a bunch of stuff. So I would go there if you want to buy a copy. You can buy wherever books are sold. Just choose your retailer and enter your code, and I'll send you everything. And then come say hi to me on Instagram. And that's where I spend most of my time on social. And my podcast is called The Spiritual Hustler, which is a show mainly for female entrepreneurs, but guys listen to it too, about the intersection of business branding and spirituality.
You find more people are having to find spirituality in their life? Like
absolutely.
A lot of entrepreneurs, high-performing people are losing themselves? Yeah.
Yeah. I think people are more interested in that conversation than ever. So hopefully they got something out of today.
Yeah, because you don't want to build something impressive and then you have
no soul. It's
no soul.
Yeah.
You know, your family relationships are broken. You have no friends. Like you have money in the bank, but everything's superficial.
Right.
It's not good either. If you're going to look back and tell your younger self, your 20-year-old self, one thing after everything you've learned, what would that thing be?
You've got this. You're going to be great. Don't stress so much. It all worked out in the end.